Welcome to Season 2 of Triple Overtime. In Episode 2, the boys pick their NFL playoff dark horse teams. Plus, who do the guys have as their NBA MVPs so far? Also, the SEC has a complete stranglehold on the NCAA football playoffs. Is there a way to add more parity to the tournament? All this and a segment from Amaar on Antonio Brown. Tighten those laces and check yourself in at the scorer's table because this is Triple Overtime.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is another episode of Triple Overtime. As always, I am accompanied by the men, the myths, the legends, Dylan Holloway, Amaar Burton. How you guys doing? Back again, trying to stay consistent, with our scheduling for the Triple Overtime episodes here. But Dylan, how are you doing, man, since our last episode?
I'm doing pretty well. I think last episode went really well. Had a fun time editing it, watching it back, and I think season 2 started off with a bang. I really enjoyed our talk on John Madden. If anybody hasn't watched it yet, go back and watch it. We talked about John Madden. We talked about the Los Angeles Lakers because no one ever talks about the Lakers enough, and we talked about some of our favorite sports moments, memories of 2021. So I think it was a pretty good show all in all. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. I'm not in LA. You can see the UCLA behind me.
You're not
That's
just
the
on
back.
the court right now.
No, I'm not at at UCLA's arena. I'm not on wooden court. That's just my background. I'm actually in Vegas. And it is popping out here sports wise. Like the Raiders are kind of on the verge of making the playoffs, and there's a hockey team out here that I semi pay attention to that's doing pretty good apparently. And like UNLV basketball's out here, so I gotta get out to a game. But yeah, doing good, excited. Season 2 got off to a good start. I think we're taking that sophomore year leap. So let's get this going.
So how great would that be if Amaar was like, I'm not actually in LA courtside at the Bruins arena. It's just I didn't want to show that I'm really field side at the Las Vegas Raiders stadium. I was kind of disgusted by it. So I used the UCLA Bruins courtside background instead.
I didn't want to actually show that I'm in a nursery and there's a crib behind me. So
yeah. He's at the crib in the crib room.
Yeah. By the crib in the crib.
Yeah. Sponsored by MTV Cribs. Y'all remember that show?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. Didn't they bring that back?
I don't know. I think they might have. Remember Pip My Ride? That was another good one too.
Yeah. I thought
some of the silliest ideas for car stuff they ever had on that.
Yeah, sadly enough, 85% of the cars on Pit My Ride didn't make it. Something like they broke down within a year, and most of them they couldn't even be driven. A lot of the stuff had to be taken off because they couldn't be driven down the road.
I'm shocked. There was an episode where they literally put monitors on mud flaps or something stupid.
Yeah.
I remember when they put a conveyor belt of PSPs in the back in the trunk because the guy worked at an airport. He was a TSA agent or something like that.
Just a way for people to get robbed.
If someone comes into your dealership and that's their trade, is a ride that got pimped. And it's got, a fish tank in the back and, I don't know. What do y'all do with that? Can you do anything with that car? We don't
even bother looking at it. I can't sell that car, and I can't finance it, especially because most of the time the person with that car, they want some astronomical, ridiculous number because you can't really value that vehicle, right? Because it's just the value of that vehicle is what somebody's willing to pay for it, right? And for me as a dealership, most of the time, even if somebody comes in with the big fancy sound systems, this, that, and the other, it doesn't matter to me. The value of your vehicle is what the market says that VIN number and miles and condition is worth. Granted, some of that stuff may add some value, but at the end of the day, it's not going to add as much value as you put into it. So most people aren't going to accept the fact that they're not going to get that much value back, right? So we just tell people I put it on Craigslist, Facebook, whatever the case, because we're not interested.
So basically there's a lot of people walking around mad at exhibit right now.
Oh, I
And
bet.
if y'all didn't notice, Austin sells cars.
Yeah.
If that 30-second spiel about financing didn't give you a tip,
And
in
that
case
was
you weren't
car
aware.
talk with the triple overtime crew.
Yeah, and so we'll see you next week, everybody.
Yeah.
No, let's get into some NFL here, guys. The National Football League, the playoffs are right around the corner here. So we're not going to make any playoff picks because we don't know when this episode will air because we all have tight schedules. So editing wise, it gets done when it gets done. So we're going to make some predictions on some dark horse teams that have already playoff qualified that we think will make some noise, though. So Austin looks like he's still studying away over there, looking at stats. So we're going to start with Amaar. Amaar, you go with yours first.
Okay, it's kind of weird to call them the dark horse because they are currently a number 1 seed, but I'm gonna go with the Tennessee Titans because I don't think that despite their record 11-5, they're not getting talked about a lot because Derrick Henry's been out, so they don't have a superstar that's been playing, so they're not on these national TV games. They're not like a big topic of discussion. They just keep winning. They're gonna. And Henry's, supposedly coming back this week, so they're gonna get back to that power running game. They're not gonna have to rely on Ryan Tannehill to carry the offense, during the playoffs. So, assuming Henry comes back and he's playing, he's healthy, he's playing like the machine that he is. I think that they're gonna make some noise in the playoffs. They've got playoff experience. They've gone deep in the playoffs before. They've got to the AFC title game, I believe. So yeah, that would be my dark horse, top seeded team that has a bye in the first round.
I mean, that's a pretty good one because you're right. Not a lot of people are thinking of the Titans as a Super Bowl contender. It is weird to pick a number 1 seed, but it kind of seems like they became a number 1 seed kind of under the radar there, though, right?
They're kind of like
expected other teams to be the number 1 seed, and they're just like, oh, it's the Titans? Okay.
Yeah, kind of like the Utah Jazz, the NBA the last couple of years. Like they've got these high seeds, but people don't expect much out of them in the playoffs because they haven't really done it, and they don't have like, kind of like a mainstream like superstar, right? Or
it's a pretty good comp.
Well, Tennessee's going to have one, but yeah, right now they have one. So yeah, I think despite the record, they're still flying under the radar, but that'll change come postseason.
All right, Austin, what do you got?
I'm going Arizona Cardinals. I think this season they've kind of gotten away from what has been their biggest Achilles heel in seasons past since Kyler Murray's come to Arizona, and that's just been their second half collapse. Most for the last few seasons or last couple seasons, they've gotten off to really hot starts and then they've just totally faltered. You've watched Kyler Murray and that offense collapse, the defense not hold strong, etc. But they found quite a bit more consistency this second half of the season. So I think that Kyler Murray's a problem in this league. The guy is he can run, he can throw, he just does a lot of things well. And as we watch him grow and mature, he just puts consistently more and more elite tier games together on the film there. So I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to be a problem in the playoffs and make a much deeper run than a lot of people are assuming they will.
I am going to go with a team. Now, a lot of people are talking about them, but not in the sense of they're going to win a Super Bowl. But there's a lot of hype around this team right now, specifically the Joey franchise to Chase connection. I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals, the former Bungles, who are now the Cincinnati Bengals, because this team looks like an offensive powerhouse right now. Like just the last couple weeks, it looks like Joe Burrow is playing Madden on rookie mode. He just throws it up and like Chase just comes down with it every single time, no matter the positioning or anything. Like the offense just looks unstoppable. So I think, I don't like them to go to the Super Bowl or anything, but I do think they're going to surprise some people. I think they're going to knock a couple people out, maybe 1 or 2 teams out in the playoffs. So, and I think it's going to kind of shock some people, you know what I mean? So, I am excited to see where this team goes, and there's only up from here because this is a very, very young team. Also, very young coach. Also, young quarterback, young playmakers, young everything. So the team's just going to keep getting better and better. So I think the Bengals are not only going to be a problem in this year's playoffs. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be a problem in the playoffs for many years to come.
The other thing I kept hearing about the Bengals was like they're a year ahead of schedule. People they saw this
Right.
coming, but not now. Like it was going to be next year.
Oh yeah.
And it's just them coming out of that AFC North too, which was like the closest division in the league this year. Not like the NFC East last year, where it was like no one wanted to win it, but AFC North was actually like Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, like they were all in it up until week 16, week 17, and going into the season, like I don't think anybody really picked Cincinnati to actually win that division. So that was impressive for them to come out.
It was the Ravens for most by a landslide.
Yeah. Well, then the Browns were like a popular pick,
Right.
too. And yeah, we saw what happened with them. So yeah.
The less said about the Cleveland Browns this year, the better. We are back to normal. Last year was the fluke where the Browns finally made the playoffs.
It wasn't a fluke.
Austin's prediction of 34 years of the Browns making the playoffs finally came true, but now everything's back to normal. The Browns are out of the playoffs where they belong. We can all move on with our lives.
It was not a fluke. This year was the fluke, if anything. Injuries, COVID.
Was this year the fluke? It doesn't make any sense.
This year's the fluke because I think last year they set the tone and they're going to be a playoff contender for years to come. And this year, just everything that could have went wrong with like injuries, COVID, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that was a playoff team on paper when healthy. They were just never healthy. So
yeah, Stefanski is too good of a coach too not to consistently be in the playoffs, as we have seen him in every other coaching job that he's had. So that for sure they'll be back.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on now. Let's move on to a little NBA here. I know it's still kind of early, I guess, but let's talk about who we think, at least so far, has been the NBA MVP. Not who we think is going to win the MVP, because it's a whole different story, because we all know how that works. Certain players win, certain players don't win, it seems like. But who do we think is the MVP so far? Austin, I want to start with you this time. Who do you have as your NBA MVP so far?
Well, mine's the non-sexy, super obvious pick, Steph Curry. I think it's just much like with the year he won it unanimously. It's so hard. I know there's a lot of guys playing really, really good basketball right now, but none of them are playing it at a level where they're dominating the headlines, the radio waves, the airwaves, whatever, as consistently as Steph Curry is in a positive light. He did just come off of a pretty rough game a couple nights ago as of this recording, where he only put up 9 points, and I get that, but elite players, Hall of Fame players, the Michael Jordans of NBA lore are going to have those games. At the end of the day, the guy broke the all-time NBA three-point record. What was it? 800 games, or in half the time that Ray Allen had. You know what I mean? And he's carrying this team. Like, it's so obvious. Like, this isn't even one of those situations where like the Warriors are clear cut better than everybody else in the league, and he just happens to be the best player on the team. Like the Warriors are obviously so much better when he is healthy on the court and playing good basketball, you know what I mean, compared to not. So he obviously is the most important and most valuable player to that team and to the league as well, because he has that team in really, really strong contention to be a finals team, so Steph Curry's got to be my pick.
Amaar, what do you got?
I'm going with DeMar DeRozan. I think that he's got the numbers. He's averaging 27 points a game, like 5 rebounds, 5 assists, or 4.5 assists. The Chicago is on top of the East right now, which was not expected. Everyone figured that was either Brooklyn or Milwaukee was going to take the East. MVP voters historically love a guy who comes to a team in his first season and they turn around. We've seen it, Steve Nash in Phoenix, Charles Barkley in Phoenix, Moses Malone in Philly, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the Lakers. Like, you go to a team and your first season with that team, they kind of do a lot better than they did the season before and or exceed expectations, you're going to be in
And
the MVP.
correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't it seem like NBA writers, writers, because they're obviously the voters, doesn't it seem like they've been chomping at the bit for Chicago to be good for a really, really long time?
Yeah, since this one guy left Chicago, everyone's really
right. Like,
it's a major market. Yeah, it's a
they've
major
been in
market
anticipation
team
for this moment for so long.
Yeah, it's one of those teams that, like, when they're good, people say, like, when this team's good, the league is better. Chicago, New York, Boston, teams like that. And DeRozan, he comes over from San Antonio. It's his first year in Chicago. He's the top scorer on the team. He's their go-to guy. He's having those MVP moments. He's hitting game winners, buzzer beaters. He hit 2 in a row on consecutive days last week. Yeah, I think the numbers are there. He's got the moments, he's got the story, the media narrative that works with him coming to Chicago for his first year. And I think all he was kind of missing was just having the big stage. And now that he's with the Bulls in Chicago, that's the stage. Now, you got to contend with Curry and Durant, Giannis, and all them. But for me, like, DeRozan's kind of making the biggest impact and has that MVP story right there to be told.
See, and I think that's a great pick, Amaar, just because it, like I said, I know my pick was super obvious and not sexy, but like I think the most important thing when it comes to the MVP of a league is like how vital, like not the numbers or whatever, like how vital is that guy to that team, right? Like if you take that guy away from that team, do they absolutely fall apart? And I feel that's the case with the Warriors. I think that's the case with the Bulls as well. And especially with as good as they're playing, that like the Bulls took a lot of chances in the offseason, signing Lonzo Ball and what's his name from fan favorite from LA. Caruso, etc. So these are guys that like we all kind of saw come out of their shell a little bit, right? But like they really needed to be given an opportunity to like you said, be on that big stage, and to see DeRozan like step up into that leadership role, right? Like, and seamlessly go into that, especially when he went to the Spurs, everybody was just like, he's like an empty numbers guy. You know what I mean? Like he'll give you 25 a night, 25, 5 a night, 25, 5 and 5 a night. But like, you're never going to see the finals. You're never going to see deep playoff run. Like he's a superstar that's going to be long forgotten 25 years from now. So I think that my point being, that's a great pick because it is true, like how vital he is to that team. And I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Right.
25, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5,
5 and 5.
Yeah. He's just stuffing the stat sheet over here. That is a good pick, Amaar, especially storyline wise. DeMar DeRozan's one of those people that you root for, you know what I mean? So especially the situation where he got traded from Toronto, and then Toronto wins the title, and like he was such a Toronto guy, you had to feel for him. You could tell it really kind of
a hometown discount for him, dude.
It really kind of hurt him, you know what I mean?
And I was actually going to bring that up. Like a lot of people around the league are rooting for him. Those when he had those game winners last week, you saw like a lot of players around the league were like celebrating it. They were like, they're proud of him and they're glad he's getting this moment. And that kind of stuff is going to have an impact on, how the voters are going to see this race playing out. And like that, they pay attention to that kind of stuff. And like, a guy gets a groundswell of support from fellow players and fans, and the writers kind of ride along with that. And that could, push him to MVP as well.
So my pick, I don't know if this is technically sexy or unsexy because this team is so weird. I'm going with Kevin Durant of the Nets. So he's the leading scorer right now. And you would think like the Nets, like how can he be the MVP because the team's so loaded? It's really not as loaded as you think anymore, right?
Right.
No.
Like Harden's not the same Harden that we saw in Houston. He's obviously better than in the playoffs last year when he could barely walk, the poor guy. And Kyrie's been like, not there. Now he might be half there, I guess. Like, isn't the last that I heard is he might play in like the away games or something.
I think the night of either this recording or isn't it tomorrow night is when he's supposed to make his first of like his debut of the season.
Yeah, he's supposed to debut Wednesday, I believe. Yeah.
I don't know. The whole thing's weird. Anyways, Durant's stats, I think, speak for themselves. 29.7 points per game, 7.7 rebounds per game, and almost 6 assists a game. I mean, the guy's balling out of control right now. Like I said, he's leading the NBA in points. And if he gets the scoring title and the Nets have at least a top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, I think it's pretty good chance he gets the MVP. And that would really, burn and bug a lot of anti-Durant people out there who say the only reason he has the titles is because of the Warriors. He took the easy way out. Like, so many people love to hate on Durant. I know we talk about like, LeBron gets criticized and, so-and-so gets criticized, but Durant is just like this punching bag for a lot of people. So if he gets the MVP this year and then they go on to make a deep playoff run, it will be fun to watch a lot of the anti-Durant crowd just, want to jump off a building essentially. So that's my pick, is Kevin Durant.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, this team, they were supposed to be all loaded coming into the year. They have the names on paper. But if you look at what they're actually doing, Harden's production's down. He's been coming around lately. His production's down though. Kyrie's not playing. Blake Griffin's not doing anything. Like Paul Millsap, I don't even know if he's in the rotation. Lamarcus Aldridge is doing okay, but they had all these like big name guys, kind of like the Lakers though, that were like older
big guys who were good,
and they were right. Yeah, they were all stars like years ago, but you just looked at it like, oh man, they're so loaded.
These guys were all stars when we were playing 2K on the Dreamcast.
Yeah. but it set this high bar, like just like LA, like they have all these all stars, even though they're 35 or whatever. But yeah, like Durant really is like, he's playing in that traditional, role of the superstar carrying the team who's going to get MVP consideration.
Oh yeah,
because he's not splitting the votes with Harden at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't think he'd be splitting the votes with Harden. So
yeah, it's not a Curry Durant situation right now.
I think it's one of those things though. I like both your guys' picks, and I really struggle with this. I was like, Curry's a good pick. The Joker is still in contention, I think, for MVP because of just how much he's carrying this team. Talk about carrying a team right now, and he's still playing really well. So there's quite a few good picks out there.
Playoffs, do you think LeBron has to get serious like top 3 voting contention consideration?
It depends if Anthony Davis never comes back, then yes.
If they get 5th or higher, he'll be a finalist. Like he'll be in the top 3. I don't know if he'll win it, but he'll be in the conversation. I mean, there's already so much talk about how good he's playing despite being 37 years old. And
people will give him votes.
He's dragging this team right now. He's keeping them afloat until
carrying them to a 19-19 record.
Yeah, like he's keeping them from like totally falling apart until AD comes back and until Westbrook like remembers who he is or whatever. So yeah, he'll always be in the conversation just because he's the face of the league. So
I lobbied for Adam Silver to create the least improved NBA player award and give it to either James Harden or Anthony Davis this season.
Why would James Harden get it?
Because he has like regressed incredibly bad over.
Dude, he got injured. He got injured last year.
But that's what I'm saying. Last season he was like this super duper mega star, and now we're like, maybe he has some bearing on why the Nets are good this year, but probably
I don't think you can't give least improved when there's like an injury write-off on that. You know what I mean? So,
but
unless the injury write-off is that they keep getting injured like an Anthony Davis.
Right. Well,
but at this point, Anthony Street Clothes Davis is always hurt. You know what I mean? So
right.
As Charles Barkley would say. So let's move on to some more football. Let's talk a little college football. So once again, the SEC's reign of terror continues, and in the title game, it's Georgia versus Alabama. Stop me if you've heard this one before. It's an all-SEC national title game. So I don't really know how we're prefacing this question or this topic. We're not coming in anti-SEC. You know what I mean? They're obviously the 2 best teams in college football. They should play for the title. What I want to know is how do we make this? Because the NFL is all about getting parity in the league, right? It'd be nice to have some parity in college football, wouldn't it? So other conferences and other schools are like, hey, my team might make it to the title game, not just, hey, my team might get the privilege of being slaughtered by Alabama at the end of the year. Because that's what it feels like. So what can we do to spice up the playoff? What can we do to I guess to incorporate more teams? What can we do to just make it more interesting, I guess? Because right now, even though the game will be very good, I'm sure, and I'm gonna watch it because you got Nick Saban, you got the Georgia Bulldogs, it's two really good teams. You want to watch it, but it still doesn't feel like anything could happen. You know what I mean? It's
because
like
we saw it 2 weeks ago or 3
I
weeks
know,
ago.
and we saw it we saw it when Tua came in and broke Georgia's heart, and we've seen it when it's Alabama versus LSU. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it just feels like the SEC just has, because they have this stranglehold on college football. What can we do with the playoff? Any idea is welcome. The more absurd, the better in this conversation. This isn't necessarily a realistic topic here, right? What can we do with the playoff? Amaar, I see you got your thinking hat on. I'm going to let you go first. What can we do?
As long as the playoff is 4 teams, you could always just say no more than 1 team per conference. They wouldn't do that because the SEC would never agree to that because, if they can get half of their team, if they can have the playoff made up half of their teams, they're always going to want that. So they're not going to go for that. But
Team SEC is booing you right now from afar.
But yeah, that could be one thing, just like, no more than 1 team per conference. The NIL rules were, I think, in part, one of the stories was that was going to create more parity because, you don't have to go to Alabama or Georgia or LSU to become a star in the college scene, right? To make a name for yourself. You can go elsewhere. So that was kind of, people think that's going to create parity. Some of the coaching moves that have been made just this year, we're supposed to see USC come back under Lincoln Riley. It wasn't a coaching move, but Clemson's going to be back up. I think they just had a down year. So some of these programs who have been down are supposed to be coming back up, and that'll help matters. Otherwise, expand the playoff so you got more teams in, more chance of the SEC teams being knocked out earlier in the playoffs. Other than that, I don't know.
Austin, give me. I know you got something brewing over there. Give me something crazy. Let's go.
So anybody that plays for an SEC conference football team that's in the playoffs, all players, even the coach, have to wear a 50-pound boulder chained to their ankle to ensure that it's a fair playing. No, honestly.
And then Alabama will only win by 15 at that point.
Yeah. Hey, it'll be close though. Okay, at least it'll be worth watching. But in all honesty, I think that we need to expand the playoffs, whether it be 8 teams, 12 teams, 16 teams, in some way, shape, or form. We've got to get more teams in there to play a bit, just for, if nothing else, 1, you create more meaningful games at the end of the season, right? And 2, you can make a few more of these bowl games I know it's kind of the same thing, but mean something, right? So it's not just 357 bowl games to end the season, and then you have 4 games, that are really worth watching or whatever because they're in the playoffs. So expand it in that regard. But I honestly think that we've already kind of started to see the tide turn. We obviously have the huge story that, we didn't do an episode on per se, but with Deion Jackson taking away the number 1 recruit in the nation at cornerback to Jackson State,
Deion Sanders.
I'm sorry.
At Jackson State.
Anyways, Jackson State.
He just melded the guy with the
it's HBCU. Yeah. Right. So we've seen that happen. And, some of the rumors around that was that the kid got paid, which whatever, but my point being is that, like Amaar said, we're in a position where these kids can get paid wherever they go, and they don't necessarily have to go to these blue blood colleges to make a name for themselves or to create a brand or anything that's sustainable past football. So I think we're kind of in that unfortunate generation where we're not going to see the fruits of that really change the tide in the college landscape until we're old, wrinkly men. You know what I mean? Because it's going to take decades till we really, really start to see the power implemented from that. I hope it's sooner. I'd love to see it sooner, but I think we're talking 20, 30, 40 years from now but this is like the very beginning of it changing. So I know it's kind of bleak, but that's what's going to happen.
I feel like I'm going to be an old wrinkly man in like a couple of years. I mean, I'm, it's like knocking on 40.
Right.
I'm so it might happen sooner than you think.
I'm so depressed that Austin says for the next 40 years, we're going to have to watch Nick Alabama win the national title every year. So mine, I really like to expand the playoff, and I've been on this bandwagon for a while, and I didn't come up with this idea, but a guy named Mike Leach, former Washington State football coach.
Are we taking Mike Leach ideas now?
What's that?
Are we taking Mike Leach ideas now?
We are.
Yep.
I am at least.
He said the most absurd. So
the mad scientist. He said just make it college basketball. Bring in 64 college football teams and just do a huge, like, what would you call this? Fall madness? Let's call it fall madness. Let's get 64 teams in there, because even if Alabama wins at the end, at least the lead up to it will be very exciting. You'll get some upsets. You know what I mean? You'll get some unknown, lower known teams that people don't watch all the time, that aren't always on national TV. And you'll get a team in there. You'll get a matchup, because there'll be matchups that some teams haven't seen each other before, right? So, and football is one of those things. You only play the game once. The ball bounces in odd ways. You never know what could happen. It'd be very cool to see some crazy football upsets in the national football and the national title college football playoff. You know what I mean? And I just think it's a great idea. 64 teams.
That idea itself reminds me of the of basketball, when they do the basketball tournament, and it's just like this long drawn out 6-month tournament for the championship or whatever.
I know. Yeah, you cut the regular season to like 6 games.
So many people argue against this, and the biggest argument I always hear is, Dylan, what about the regular season? The college football playoff regular season won't mean anything anymore. Do you think it means anything when Alabama beats the Citadel by 80,000 points in week 6? Nobody's watching that game. Nobody's like, oh man, I got to tune into Alabama versus the Citadel. No one cares about that. Shorten the regular season, expand the playoff, 64 teams. Heck, you're lucky right now I'm keeping it at 64. I got an itch to go even higher than that. You know what I mean? Give me 120 teams. Let's go.
Yeah, there is like 400 college teams in the Division I for NCAA. So, I mean, you could go 128 teams and still not even touch half of them. So,
let's do it. Let's just.
That's a lot.
I think it'd be so fun.
One shining moment for football. I'm down. I could do that. I'm down for that.
Wouldn't it be cool, though? And like, you'd see some players that you don't normally see, because how many times have we been watching the draft and you see some guy, Mel Kiper Jr. knows who he is, and Todd McShay knows who he is, but nobody else knows who he is. Like, this kid came out of this school, this small school, and he's the best guard, or he's the 3rd best guard, or he's the 4th best safety, and I think he's really going to make a difference. And Bill Belichick has got another gem, you know what I mean? And it's like, you never see these people actually play, because unless you actually follow the school or live there, you probably don't really even know they exist, unless you see like maybe a blurb about them in like a mock draft or something. But if we do this huge tournament, you will see these teams, these players highlighted, just like we do in college basketball, because every year during March Madness, you see these players that you never really heard about earlier in the season. It's like, oh, this player, this is average. He's really good. He's being talked about going to the NBA, and he's from some small school you never heard of, but the guy's a baller. You know what I mean? And there's players like that in college football too.
And then you just put all the SEC teams on one side of the bracket, so they can't be SEC against each other in the title game. That works.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, you do it just like
Breaking news, as of this recording, right this very second, Kyrie just made his first bucket of the season. So,
what was it? A layup?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Who are they playing?
A 2-point shot from just inside the free throw line.
Who are they playing?
I think they're playing Indiana.
At Indiana. Yep.
It's so weird that like he can't play at home.
And of course, Indiana has really lax like vaccination rules.
That you didn't need to say that. We all knew that. It was implied.
And not enough people like understand like what's happening, and they keep thinking that like it's the Nets who are doing this, and it's not the team, it's the local government. That's why
I know
he can't play.
my favorite is like Kyrie stood up to the league and he won. Like, no, he didn't. Like they wanted him to play the whole time. It was New York.
Like it's not like they're not keeping him from playing.
Right, has nothing to do with it. It's like governmental legislation that doesn't allow him in that public place without being vaccinated. So like you don't think that the front office and the Nets brass has been trying to figure out all season how they can get Kyrie Irving on the court? But everybody's so quick to screw the team and screw the league. The player needs to be able to stand on his own, quit trying to take away his freedoms. It has nothing to do with that, dude. It's the government. It's not the teams at all.
And there's the theory that the newly inaugurated mayor of New York is going to be anti, he's not going to be as strict with the mandates and vaccines and all that. And so he's going to clear the path for Kyrie to be able to play.
He's going to be like, only people who don't have the vaccine can play now in New York. Everybody who got the booster, you're out of the league.
That's 98%.
He's completely flipping the script on us. Anyways, I'm going to lay down some legislation here. We're going to take a short
Kyrie
break.
Out by himself in a layup line.
Is Kyrie and Brad Beal playing one-on-one?
We're gonna take a short break here, and when we come back, Amaar has something to say about Antonio Brown. You don't want to miss this. We'll be right back with more Triple Overtime after this.
So, Antonio Brown. If you're tuned into the show, you've already seen the video. You've heard at least one of the handful of explanations and excuses being thrown around to make sense of what AB did. What stood out to me was how seamlessly AB supporters move from like one story to the next, like almost as seamlessly as he can go from like the drawn up pass route to improvising when his like quarterback is scrambling. First, the story when this first happened on Sunday was that Antonio Brown's got CTE. He's got mental health issues. So his little strip show and walkout wasn't his fault because, his brain's messed up and he doesn't know what he's doing. So we can't hold it against him. He's barely there, Then a few hours later, the story turns into AB absolutely knew what he was doing, but he stormed off because the Buccaneers were purposely keeping him off the field and out of action so he couldn't get the bonuses on his contract for production, certain numbers of catches, yards, touchdowns, etc. A few hours after that, the story flips to actually the Buccaneers were trying to force Antonio Brown to play on an injured ankle, and he didn't want to play, so he left because he's protecting his own health. 3 different stories, like just coming from all over the place. Nobody knows really what's up because Antonio Brown hasn't really said anything. And whichever one of these stories you believe, the problem is that none of them really hold up, right? The CTE mental health, that may be legit. However, nobody knows whether or not Antonio Brown has CTE. We're not going to know whether Antonio Brown has CTE until after he's passed away and his brain can be examined. Far as I know, we don't necessarily know about, what diagnosed mental health issues he has exactly. There may be something there, but here's the thing. Just because somebody has a mental health issue, it doesn't mean that everything they do is related to that mental health issue. Sometimes people who have mental health issues just do things that, they act out of pocket and they're just acting out of pocket. It's not because of their mental health. It's not because of CTE. That's just how they're acting, right? So we can't excuse everything that Antonio Brown does, good or bad, by saying, oh, it's a mental health issue, right? The story about the contract incentives, not buying that one. He was in a similar situation last year with his contract. He had to hit certain numbers to get his incentives. And going into the last regular season game, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, they force-fed him the ball. He was targeted 15 times in last season's finale so he could hit his numbers and get his bonuses. So I don't believe that they're going to turn around this year after they did everything last year to get him his bonuses. And then now they want to freeze him out and don't want to give him his $1 million, which to an NFL team is not a lot of money at all, right? Antonio Brown played 7 games this year, thanks to injuries and thanks to the suspension that he got for himself with because of a fake vaccine card. And 3 of those 7 games he played, he had double-digit targets, right? When he's on the field, they get him the ball. They throw him the ball. he has a higher percentage of double-digit target games than Mike Evans, than Chris Godwin, than Rob Gronkowski. So I don't believe that Brady and Arians don't want him to get, his numbers, right? He's important to that team. The injury story, that may be the most believable of the three, but still, NFL players every week get hurt during the game. They tweak things during the game. An old injury that they thought they were, past comes back and it's hurting them. And they tell the trainers and they tell the coach. And if, it's determined that they're not going to play anymore, then they don't play. Teams want, especially a team like Tampa Bay that's contending for a Super Bowl title, they want to protect their investment. And they're not going to force Antonio Brown to play in week 17 against the Jets when, they want to have him healthy for the playoffs and for the Super Bowl. None of these are the most popular stories that are going on about what may have been the explanation. None of them to me really hold that much water. And I don't know which one's closest to the truth, but we can't rush to make these excuses for him when he's not even bothering to explain it himself. He hasn't said nothing about what's going on. We don't know. Probably maybe only one person in the world, maybe two, didn't know what's happening, and they ain't talking. Bruce Arians ain't talking. Tom Brady's not really saying nothing about it. Antonio Brown's not saying nothing about it. So at this point, don't, bend over backwards and go out of your way to excuse the behavior until we know more about it. At this point, we just simply don't.
We are back. Fantastic segment, Amaar. Amaar brought the receipts for y'all. Man, he had receptions. He had number of targets. He had everything. He had all the documentation ready to go. Don't even try to say he didn't buy that donut, as Mitch Hedberg would say, the late, great Mitch Hedberg. I'll send that joke to you later, Amaar. I'm sure you've never heard that one. Austin knows what I'm talking about.
But yeah. Antonio Brown was on one of my fantasy teams this year, so I did know his stats. Kind of had him up here. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And I'm with you on that. So we talked about talking about AB before this, and I said I didn't want to waste my breath on him, but here I go. The reason I didn't want to waste my breath on him is because I can't believe that people are still defending this guy at this point. And there are people who are hardcore defending him as if he's this huge victim. We don't know, like you said, if he has mental health issues or whatever. That's neither here nor there. Not everything can be written off as, oh, he has mental health issues, or oh, he had a hard life, or oh, this, or oh, that, because we've all had stuff we're going through, right? And for him to just quit on his team in the middle of the game, which is not even probably in the top 10 worst things he's ever done. There's a list. And I don't need to explain all the stuff. You can go Google all the stuff right now. There's a list. It's just ridiculous. Austin, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. At a certain point, I'll just say this to open up about who I am a little bit. I'm someone who deals with some mental health issues. I have my oldest of my three boys. He also deals with mental health issues. And it's something that we talk about on a fairly regular basis. Just because you're dealing with whatever anxieties, bipolar, whatever the mental health issue may be, just because you're dealing with that does not give you an excuse or a free pass to act like an a-hole, right? It doesn't allow you, even if that was the case, right? Oh, he's bipolar, or the CT or whatever caused his brain to be mush, and that's why he acted crazy. Okay, I get that may happen, but that doesn't all of a sudden make it okay. You know what I mean? That doesn't all of a sudden make it excusable that he literally ripped his jersey and pads off, threw his jersey into the stands along with his towels, and walked out on his team, not in the locker room, halfway through the freaking third quarter of the game. And Dylan said, that doesn't, if it does, barely crack the top 10 things of incredibly stupid and terrible things that this guy has done since entering the league, one of which was kicked off by him stomping the face of a punter for no reason whatsoever. You know what I mean? So it's just at a certain point, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and eats like a duck, it's a duck, right? And this duck needs to go home, retire, and get out of the NFL.
What do you think, Amaar? You think he's done, or you think another team's probably going to sign him?
He's 33. he's talent. I mean, he was the best receiver in the league.
The talent is no question. I think we all agree. And we're not saying he's not good.
That old, and he's not, super injury, like he doesn't get injured all the time or anything like that. So I feel like some team will take a chance on him. Again, another incentive-based contract, 1 year, a prove-it deal or whatever. Somebody like, I don't know what team would do it, but some team that needs a playmaker and they're willing to take that chance. They feel like they have a strong coach, that's what Tampa Bay was supposed to be, like strong coach, veteran quarterback, guys who will keep him in line, guys that he's friends with on the team. That was supposed to be an ideal situation for him, and he blew that up. So,
see, that's why I think he's done, because that's what, like, everything you just described as to what it might take, like, that's what he had in Tampa Bay. You know what I mean? Like, all of that was laid out perfectly for him, and he still did what he did, which also, I just want to quick hot take alert. If you go back and watch some of our older episodes, you will see the hot take when Austin was told he was crazy for saying Earl Thomas will never play in the league again. And here we are 2 years later. He's still yet to play it down in the league.
There's still time. That won't be official until like we're all dead, basically.
Like 10 years from now.
Yeah.
No, but I in the same token of why I thought and why I said Earl Thomas was done, I think it's the same thing with Antonio Brown. At a certain point, you have to weigh, like, is the drama worth the production? Guess what? Tampa Bay won a Super Bowl last year. So it absolutely was worth it, because Antonio Brown caught a touchdown in that Super Bowl.
He also didn't do anything really dramatic yet either, right?
No, not really. He was like finally coming off the tail end of all of his other drama from the Raiders and all, you know what I mean? Like, he was far enough removed from it that they could, it was still a story, but people were like, okay, maybe now it's time for him to get his chance. But I think he's done, because I can't see any team, especially given what he's just done with the Buccaneers. I can't see any team that's that close, like that one playmaker away to put them over the edge, that would want to take on any media backlash, any potential like outburst, any of that stuff, that it's worth it. It's the same reason why Colin Kaepernick was never signed. Same reason why Earl Thomas hasn't been signed. Same reason why Aldon Smith, it took him so long to get back into the league, and now he's kind of a nobody. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's the production just does not meet the drama and everything else that comes with it. Antonio Brown is done. He'll never play in the NFL again.
Ever again. I don't know that I can't say definitively if he will or not, because he's such an enigma. I don't know if he wants to, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's like, what else does he have? Like, he obviously doesn't care about the incentives because he bailed. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He already thinks he's like one of the best receivers ever, and to his credit, he is one of the best ones of this generation.
He seemed happy to leave. Sure. When he left, he was smiling. He was hopping around. He was.
I don't know that I don't know that he would want to come back. I don't know why he would want to come back.
It's very reminiscent of the Terrell Owens situation, right?
Especially like to a team that is desperate enough to need him.
Yeah,
right.
Because the team is desperate enough to need him.
Terrell Owens has always made it very clear that he wants to play. Terrell Owens said today that he wants to play. He's like 46. He still wants to come back. Antonio Brown, he seemed glad to leave. And then ever since he left, he's been going to NBA games. He's been hanging out. He dropped a rap song.
Almost immediately. Like the next
he just seems like, he's done and he wants to do other stuff. And, he's not even tripping about football right now. So
was it a marketing scheme? Here's the crazy tin hat theory. Antonio Brown wanted to kickstart his rap career by leaving midway through an NFL game to create the media buzz, to drop his rap video and kickstart his music career.
That could be a thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Kind of weird, but I mean,
in the mind of Antonio Brown, that might make sense,
It might. Yeah.
Anyways, we are all out of time. We got to get out of here so we can go drop a rap song right after this. Austin, Amaar, they're both going to get jiggy with it. We're all getting jiggy with it up in here.
No.
I want to thank everyone for watching episode 2 of season 2 of Triple Overtime. We will be back Maybe not next week, maybe in 2 weeks. Who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll call you. We'll get a hold of you. We'll be back, though, for more Triple Overtime and more great sports talk. Good night, everybody.